Hi everyone, my name is Deyaniracavazos and I am an LPC-associate from the state of Texas. I also own my own private practice called Co's Mental Health Services, and I share dedicated videos for therapists in training, and pre-licensed clinicians here on my channel. When I tell you that I am so excited for today's video, I get extra excited when I know I'm about to share resources and tips that I wish I had early on when I was thinking about going to grad school. So today's video is going to be all about what I wish I knew before choosing a grad school program to become a mental health therapist. And my hopes with this video is that you feel more prepared and more confident when it comes to making the best decision for yourself, because choosing that program and what route to take can be very overwhelming. So I got you. Let's go ahead and get into this video. So the number one thing that I want to share with you is when you begin to decide for yourself that you want to become a mental health therapist, you can actually take different routes to do that. So you can go the counseling route, that is the route that I chose. You can go the psychology route, the social worker route, or the marriage and family therapy route. And it's also very important to note that what I'm going to be speaking on today is very much dedicated to my knowledge in working in the state of Texas. So definitely keep that in mind. In everything that I'm going to be sharing, it's very important to do your own research in your state and see how things may vary. But in the state of Texas, if you go to your state board site, which you should have one as well, for your state, you are able to see that on the BHEC website, counselors, psychologists, social workers, marriage and family therapists all share that specific website under the Texas State Board. And so that leads me into the second tip, and that is that it is so important to go on your state board licensing website, so that way you can see the requirements for each license, because that specifically can really be a game changer when deciding what route to take. It's something that I did not know. I wish I had truly known this before going in. I'm glad that things worked out, but I would have liked to have had more knowledge in that area to make a better decision for myself, because when you go on there, it tells you the specific requirements to getting that license, what you're able to do with that license, right? So in some states, pre-licensed clinicians still cannot open their own private practice after graduating and getting their license as they're working toward their hours, because maybe you'll be able to see that social workers are able to do so or psychologists are able to do so. And I personally loved choosing the counseling route. I gained a lot of knowledge and I loved the mindset that it gave me as a therapist. But also, as we know, grad school programs are not cheap. It is an investment in your career, so you can definitely always get continued education, in certain areas. But I think when it comes to making that big decision, there's so many other factors to take into consideration, like what you're able to do with your license afterward. Are you required to complete a certain number of hours before you can get your license? So these first two tips are huge and could definitely change the route that you decide to take. And I will go ahead and link the BHEC website down in my description if you want to go ahead and check that out for Texas. But if you are from another state, definitely just Google state board licenses for counselors in Michigan, Oregon, whatever state that you're from. Now, tip number 3 is also very crucial, and that is to seek out a grad school program that is accredited. And so because I chose the counseling route, my accreditation comes from CREP, and I believe if you choose the psychology route, that's APA. And I actually have my laptop here handy to share this with you. So this is off of the CREP website, and so it says accreditation provides recognition that the content and quality of the program has been evaluated and meets standards set by the profession. The student as a consumer can be assured that appropriate knowledge and skill areas are included, and that the program is stable professionally and financially. So aside from all that jargon, basically why it's important to choose an accredited program is because it will help you have more accessibility to jobs post-grad, because people will know that your program was legit, basically. It also ensures that if you need to transfer universities, your credits are transferable, and you're also taught in accordance to the tests that you're going to be testing for, which, debatable, because for those of us who have taken the NCE, we know something isn't mathing, you know what I mean? But for the most part, that is how it works. It assures you that you're gaining the fundamental knowledge that you need on top of everything else that I mentioned. The reason why this is also so important is because I would not want any of you to go through the hard work that comes with going through a grad school program that you went through wasn't accredited and wasn't something that is accepted by the licensing board. And so I will also leave the website down below where you can go ahead and check if a university's program is accredited. There's so much that you end up finding out along the way as a first-gen student. If you know, you know. Okay, everyone, so the next tip that I have to share with you is to apply to at least 2 to 3 programs. In case one doesn't work out, then you're left with a couple more options. Apparently, I was feeling like living dangerously at the time and I only applied to 1 program. The reason why I did that was because my bachelor's really transferred well into my master's degree. They were both from similar programs. I went the clinical rehabilitation counseling route, and so I knew professors from undergrad that were tied to professors in grad school, and so I got them as references, made those connections, and so they wrote me really good letters of recommendation that got me into my grad school program because of my GPA and the relationships that I worked really hard to establish. And so something else to note is that I actually did not have to take the GRE to get into my master's program. It was not something that was required at the time. I'm not sure if that has changed, so that's something to definitely keep in mind for yourself in case the program that you are seeking out requires you to take the GRE, so that way you have time to plan that out, study for it, and also take it. But looking back, if I could tell younger me something, it would have been at least applied to another program. Girl, please, like just do it. Now, the next tip that I have for you is maybe not something that some of you might find beneficial or something worth thinking about, but I still wanted to share it, and that is to take into consideration where you plan on working or practicing when choosing your grad school program, especially if you're doing in person or also online as well, because it is very important to start establishing connections with other peers, with other professionals and professors in your area, because those are going to be very important connections when you are job seeking or when you are looking for an internship as well. All of these things can be so helpful, and I know when I've worked with other counselors in training, something that they've mentioned is how scary and hard it is if they did, for example, like an online program, or they did their program in another state where they didn't end up working, because now they're left without connections or without the knowledge of how things work in a certain state. And so I know some of those things can't always be helped because sometimes we might have to move and we hadn't planned for it at all, but I just wanted to throw that out there anyway, in case it might resonate with some of you and it's something that you'd like to explore a little bit more. I'm also sharing it because that was the case for me. I chose early on that I wanted to work in my community or at least stay here, so it was very important for me to also go to school here, make connections here. And now I work with Latina women all across Texas, but I am situated here in my hometown. And it was very important for me to have those connections. Now I am very good, standing on my own. I feel that I've made a good name for myself on social media when it comes to marketing, but there were points before that I really needed to establish good relationships with people. So just something to keep in mind. So the rest of the tips are really getting into the nitty-gritty of grad school. So the next tip or thing that I want to share with you all is to keep in mind that grad school is basically a full-time job. And when you first see, oh, it's 3 courses, it might not seem that way, but with the amount of work that you have to do, and specifically the group projects, oh my goodness, the bane of my existence. When I tell you that I loathed group projects, I hated them, because as adults, it's already hard enough to sync schedules. People have families to care for, jobs, a lot of things, and grad school doesn't really take into consideration those things most of the time. It's basically implied that that is your life, school is your life. Not very forgiving of having a lifestyle or needs outside of grad school. So something to definitely keep in mind. You will be sacrificing or making changes to your priorities when you take this on. And personally, I think it's definitely not something that should be taken lightly. I missed out on a lot of things for many years as I was getting through my grad school program, and it was a choice that I made, and now looking at my life, I don't regret it, but that doesn't mean that there isn't still grief, tied to the sacrifices that were made. And that's not something that's very much talked about. You usually hear about someone's start and someone's end, but we don't talk about the messiness, the pain, the anxiety, the depression, the sadness, the excitement, like the roller coaster ride that is grad school that you feel in between. And so something to keep in mind too is that you can work things out with your program director. I know for me, because I was working full-time and part-time at a certain place for my mental health, sometimes I needed to have a semester where I only took 2 courses, where I only took 1 course. The summers, sometimes I wasn't able to take it. And if you want to hear about my imperfect grad school journey, I have a video dedicated to that, so I will definitely link that for you all if you want to go ahead and hear about all of that situation. Now, the next tip that I have for you is to do your research with the grad school program you intend to apply to on whether or not they allow you to take on a paid internship or if it's going to be unpaid. Mine had to be unpaid, which was terrible. Free labor from grad students is something that I completely disagree with, but I know some of you have shared that you were allowed to do a paid internship, so that's also something to keep in mind. And if we want to take it a step further, if you were able to do a paid internship, please leave a comment down below of your program and university. We got to get the word out there for people because there's so many programs and so much research that it can be very overwhelming. It's also important to ask if your university program will connect you with an internship and practicum site, or if they're going to require for you to seek that out, because again, that could be an important factor for you or for someone else. The amount of stress that came with having to find my own practicum and internship site was beyond anything that I could express to you. It was very stressful, and the math just wasn't mathing. You know, when you're paying your grad school program to learn and to get educated, but then you also have to go on your own to seek out an internship site where you can learn, where you're not being paid, but yet you're also paying for gas, paying for, you know, your living expenses and everything during that time. So again, something to keep in mind. Which brings me to the next tip, and because I am sharing this knowledge and these resources with you right now, you also have an advantage to plan things out with time. So if you need to save your money in order to prepare for practicum and internship, it is a good idea to save your money in case you have to take that semester or a couple semesters off of work in order to do that. Because let me tell you, internship plus if you're taking other courses or the class that comes with internship is its own full-time gig. It truly is. You are going to be showing up somewhere, like if you're working but you're not getting paid. So definitely something that I wish I was aware of as well, because I had to make that decision for myself. Very last minute, I chose to quit the job where I was at just so I could dedicate myself to my internship. And also, if for some reason throughout this video you're thinking, well, why didn't you research this? It is very hard for someone to understand if they're not first gen. That generational knowledge and wealth is not there. We are gradually creating that for ourselves, and that comes with many, many obstacles along the way. So I definitely do not want anyone to feel ashamed on here. If you're watching this and you're thinking, well, why didn't I think of that when I was in grad school? Why didn't I do that? We are not to blame. We did the best that we could with the knowledge and the resources that we had at the time. And my only hope is that in sharing this, it prepares or sets someone up who was in a similar position as me to have all that they need to be able to make the best decision for themselves. The next little tidbit of information that I want to share with you is that most grad school courses are at night. Now, if yours weren't, again, definitely comment down below, but what I've heard from others as well is that their courses were also at night, which I had no idea coming into the grad school program, because usually before an undergrad, I would plan things out so I could have my courses a little bit earlier in the day, knock them out, then I would have the rest of the day. This is a different setup where courses are at night, so that means your studying will either be done like at 9 or 10 p.m. after your courses, or the next day in the morning, throughout your day. If you're like me, while you're working and during your work breaks. So it's definitely going to be a shift in schedule if you're not used to that kind of dynamic. So again, something to know and to keep in mind. The next tip that I have to share with you is also related to internship and practicum, and that is if you are already working at a school or at a certain mental health facility or agency as a case manager or facilitator, for example, definitely ask your program director or your professors if you can still utilize that job site for your practicum and internship, and intern with a therapist on there, because this will save you time and money. I personally know of people who not only have to work, like for example, at a school, but then afterward have to drive off to their internship. And if you're a teacher or you know teachers, you know that that job in and of itself is already very high stress. So imagine having to go to a full-time internship afterward. It's too much for any human being. That's just too much. So definitely something to ask your program about, because ideally it would just be so much better if you could count that toward your hours and you're already at that job site, so you can maybe work something out where maybe during your breaks or during certain time periods you're getting some hours in and getting to intern. The next tip that I have for you might be an obvious one, but that's to really know how much your grad school program will cost you, and if that's a sacrifice that you're willing to make. And again, I do say sacrifice because it is so expensive. I am still crossing all of my fingers that my loans will be forgiven. I applied for it. We will see. I hope so, because otherwise the other type of government, loan forgiveness basically involves you having to work for so many years for a community mental health agency for them to be forgiven. And at that point, it's kind of like, unless you really love community mental health, it's just very frustrating that that's the option. So something to keep in mind is that there's also scholarships and grants that are offered through your university. So that's something to become very well versed in your grad school program. I know there were scholarship options that I could have applied for. I didn't apply for certain ones because again, they required you to work for a community mental health agency for a certain number of years. And so I ended up taking more of the grant route. I would apply each semester and I would get $1,000 taken off of my fees. And so in the grand scheme of things, that might not seem like a lot, but it was still something. That's still something that I don't have to pay back, thankfully. Something else to keep in mind is that you will have outside expenses. Now, some things are expected, right? Like school materials, but no, you will have other expenses, especially when it comes to group projects, gas money, and especially with your internship and practicum site, the gas money for commutes if you're commuting, unless you end up landing an online internship, which would be ideal. That is so great. But if not, there are expenses from like the food that you're going to be purchasing, your living expenses, all of these outside things. You're also going to at one point have to purchase your own liability insurance. At the time I went with HPSO. That was the liability insurance that I went through, and hopefully your grad school program will explain to you why. But if not, the main reason why it's important for you to have this when you're doing your practicum and internship is because if something were to go wrong, I've never experienced it, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. If something were to happen, your university would not protect you. They would not back you up. They would protect themselves. And my professors were always very clear in making this known to us, like, please, you need this. Do not do this without it, because you just never know. So that is an expense that I did not take into consideration. So something very important to note, especially during your last semester, to consider if you're saving your money for your practicum and internship. Now, moving on to the last tidbits. I didn't create these into their own little categories, but just things that I wanted to share with you that are so important. And the first thing is to please not compare yourself to anyone else. I know easier said than done, but like I say to my own therapy clients who are in university, you do not know what levels of privilege someone is operating with. There are going to be classmates that you're with who have everything paid for. They don't have a job, they don't have a family, things to care for, then they can just dedicate themselves to university and do that. Others will have full-time jobs and families and everything in between. Everyone has their own life different things that they're going through, different experiences, different backgrounds. So at the end of the day, try to make the most genuine connections that you have, but do not compare yourself to other students. You are unique. You bring your own thing to the table as a therapist in training. So try to have the blinders on and just run your course, do what you need to do. And it's also important to keep in mind that academics or an academic setting is basically like a life transition, because a lot of things in your life are not truly settled because you're working toward having those things settled. So it's going to feel very overwhelming at times. And like our program let us know, do not diagnose yourself with the DSM, because I am sure that you will find that you have anxiety and depression somewhere along the way. It is not an option, it is a given. I remember being so scared when I heard that, and now looking back, I'm like, yeah, it's true. Burnout, all of the things, you know. So it's very important to be as compassionate and gentle with yourself as you can. Accept help from the people around you who want to genuinely support you along your journey. It's something that I wish that I had understood, but again, first gen, problem. I've had to work through some things on my own, as you will too throughout your program. You will be challenged. You will be met with a lot of things that you either have to choose to confront or run away from. And if anything, I hope you choose to confront them and sit with them and really think about it. We all go through it. We're going to be met with different populations, different things that we hadn't maybe even considered before, that's going to make us a better therapist in the long run if we lean into it. In your lowest points, because you will have one, we all do, remind yourself of your why you're doing this. Have it somewhere that's visible for you on your laptop. I know something that was very important for me was to have my degree plan, and I would highlight every time that I would finish a course, and I would have like my little 3 to 5 year plan for myself and goals, and I would check off the closer that I would get to those goals to motivate myself. So that's also something that you can do as well if you would find that helpful. And the last very important piece of information that I want to share with you, if you yourself as a therapist in training have a mental health condition or illness, or if you're seeing a doctor, therapist, psychiatrist who has given you a diagnosis, you are eligible to apply for accommodations through your university. And different accommodation options range from having more time when test taking, when turning in assignments. There are definitely different types of accessibility options, and it is your right to have access to these things. And like I also tell my own therapy clients, even if you don't use all of them on a certain semester because maybe things are going a bit better, a bit lighter, it is still so important to have those accommodations in place for when you go through those low points and your mental health takes a hit. So definitely something that I wish was more common knowledge. It's something that I help my own therapy clients with when it comes to advocating for them to have accommodations in universities. So I definitely understand that there are different reasons why someone might want to do that or might not want to do it, but I still, again, want to present it to you so you can make the best decision for yourself and set yourself up for success through your graduate program. And so if you do want to pursue accommodations, go to your university website and look up accommodations or student accessibility center, and they will have the application on there, and your therapist can help you fill this out, or your PCP or any licensed clinician that you are working with. Thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. I really hope that you found it helpful. Feel free to let me know down in the comment section which tip you found most helpful. If you have already graduated from your program, definitely also let us know if there's some things that maybe I didn't mention that you wish you would have known sooner or before pursuing your graduate program. I would love to read about it, and I'm sure others would find it so helpful. If you're new to my channel, definitely hit that subscribe button, like this video, share it with anyone else who you think might find it helpful. All of these things help support my channel. Take care, everyone, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.